Hoosier Nation, the road gets tougher and the stakes get higher. Your number 2 Indiana Hoosiers are rolling into College Park to face the Maryland Terrapins in a Big Ten East clash that could shake up the conference race. Fernando Mendoza and the Hoosiers' high-powered offense look to light up the scoreboard again, while Indiana's defense, one of the nation's best, aims to shut down Malik Washington and the Terps. The eyes of the Big Ten are watching, the lights are bright, and the Hoosiers are ready. This is Hoosier Tailgate on thehoosier.com, and it starts now.
And picked off up the sideline. Indiana, Asbury, walking them down. Woo! IU, America, they got a football team now.
Hello again and welcome to Hoosier Tailgate here on thehoosier.com. We appreciate you coming to join us here on this Thursday evening. The Maryland preview as the Indiana heads to the East Coast to take on the Terps in a homecoming battle for the Indiana Hoosiers, being picked as the homecoming game in Maryland this weekend. So should be a pretty lively atmosphere there in College Station. And Indiana will have every opportunity to spoil their homecoming there in College Park, Maryland. Appreciate you joining us here this evening. Couple housekeeping items. If you got a chance, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, let you know every time we drop a video here on Hoosier Tailgate, as well as follow us on our Twitter page at Hoosier Tailgate and at Coach Griff 55. There you can find a lot of information, and on the Tailgate X site, there is a link entry there for you on my bio, and you can get different affiliation links there, especially to the Fanatics store, which last time I checked, I think they did have a free shipping for anything over $29 and maybe a 30% off, but double check on that. Go to the Hoosier Tailgate store and find what you like. It's got a lot of great stuff there, and it's hard to believe this, but we're coming up on the holidays here shortly. It's hard to believe. I've seen Christmas decorations up in many of a store throughout the Northeast Indiana area, which I don't know why they put it out in October, but it's there. Hopefully you can take advantage of the Fanatics offer there, as well as other affiliate offers there. Remember, anything you would buy through those affiliate links, the Hoosier Tailgate does get a commission from, and we try to roll it back into the show to bring you the best and the number one source for all things Hoosier football. And appreciate you joining us once again here on the Tailgate. I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith. Hey, sit back, relax for the next hour or so. We're going to talk about this Maryland Terrapin team, and a team that is very interesting on paper. And we'll get to why I think that way, because this team is what I kind of call sneaky good in a lot of respects. Plus, they had the bye week last week, so they've had an extra week to prepare for Indiana. When I was in coaching, I always thought that was a huge advantage. And I do think anytime you have 2 weeks to prepare for an opponent, it gives you an advantage because of your ability to look at multiple things, as well as address some of the issues you're having as an offense or defense, so that you're running and calling the plays that are positive in nature and staying away from the negative ones as well. But big game there on CBS. Another nationally televised game for Indiana when they head out there to College Park. And again, Indiana getting the opportunity to be on the national spotlight as something that, again, is only going to benefit them, not just from the standpoint of them being seen nationally, but also recruiting. It's a huge, huge deal recruiting. You tell a kid that you're going to be primarily on the national broadcast, whether it's Fox noon kickoff, whether it's CBS at 3:30, or NBC Big Saturday Night. Those are three areas that you can truly sell, especially if you're on them as much as Indiana has been this year. And quite honestly, kids like that. They want to see that. And when you're good, you're going to be on as much as they can put you on, regardless of who you're playing. So that's why Indiana gets a chance again with CBS, who had their game in Oregon a couple weeks ago in that. Interesting take today. I don't know if anybody saw this, but the UCLA Bruins, this was a ESPN article, is being sued by the Rose Bowl for a potential breach of contract in their lease with the Rose Bowl, as UCLA was exploring moving their games to SoFi. And the Rose Bowl caught wind of this and filed suit against the UCLA because their lease runs through 2044, I believe. So the historic Rose Bowl, that's where UCLA has played all their games. They've never played anywhere else. And they were looking into the possibility of moving their games to SoFi. I think as early as next year, maybe. But the Rose Bowl and their committee found out and put a stop to it. And UCLA will have to think of other things to figure out before they can move to SoFi in the near future in that respect. One thing I did want to bring up to everyone today is this is more of a PSA. This afternoon, I got a call from what was supposedly a Sergeant Edwards from the local sheriff's department here in Whitley County. And he kindly and politely said that I had a citation out for failing to appear for a jury duty summons. And he said it was for federal. And to make a long story short, after I thought about it for a while as I was going through this, I only lost $200 in this debacle because everything was being 900 miles an hour. So if you get a call from a local law enforcement that tries to tell you that you have whether it's a warrant or a citation out in your name, hang up and tell them to come arrest you, because no officers or a police station, sheriff or whatever, would call you to inform you of that. Dummy me. I should have thought of that, but I didn't. And fortunately enough, I was able to cancel that transaction and retain my money. But I hope they catch these SOBs, because they're pretty darn good. I usually get them pretty good sometimes, but they got me, and I can't sit here and say that, I didn't have some egg on my face. But it's a scam that is going pretty wild in Indiana alone. And the sheriff department here in my county of residence was very aware of it. And as of now, they've got at least 7 active cases involving these douchebags. And one person, I believe, was taken for $1,000. So anyway, that's my PSA. Coach Griff gets caught up in a scam that he's not smart enough to think his way out of. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you being here again, and we'll get on to the next one. But I wanted to tell everybody that because evidently this is something that is occurring not just here in the northeast part of Indiana, but throughout the state of Indiana. And make sure that you're making your friends, families, and loved ones aware of this, so they don't fall for what I fell for, and don't have any heartache in the long run. But I digress, and I move forward. You can't look in the rearview mirror, as Cignetti would say. So anyway, beyond the Rose Bowl, we talked about that. This Maryland team is what I call sneaky good. They could very well be 7-0 right now. This is a team that started off the year pretty hot. They won their first 4 games in a row with a win early on at Wisconsin, 27-10 there at Camp Randall. A true freshman quarterback, Malik Washington. And they started off the season 4-0. And again, they won 39-7 against FAU, Northern Illinois 20-9, Townsend 44-17, and Wisconsin, their first conference game, 27-10. So they were 4-0 heading into a home contest against Wisconsin. And in that time, Wisconsin in that ball game, they were down 20-3. Wisconsin was in the fourth quarter with about 11 and a half minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And they found a way to win a ball game 24-20 in that one. Same thing. They go to Nebraska. They have Nebraska coming in the next week at home. So they have 2 of these games at home at their stadium there in College Park. And again, Nebraska was down 31-27 with a little bit over, I think, a minute and a half left. And they orchestrated I believe a last second drive, or I can't remember the scenario of that one, and I should be able to look it up, dummy. But they scored. Yes, they scored with 1:08 left, where Raiola threw a 3-yard touchdown pass. They went 80 yards on 7 plays, ate up 2 minutes and 34 seconds, and scored the game winner with 1:08 remaining in the ball game. So again, they are right there in 2 games where they had the lead in the fourth quarter and did not come away with a victory. And then lastly, the game at UCLA that was 2 weeks ago, they go a game that was they scored and on a 2-minute drive to go up on UCLA. And then UCLA orchestrates a 4-play, 80-some-yard drive with 35 seconds left to kick the game-winning field goal to win 20-17. So it was tied 17-17 with 38 seconds left to go in the game after after Maryland had drove the field and scored the tying touchdown. UCLA turns around in 4 plays and gets in position to kick a field goal to win it with 2 seconds left. So there you go. They were in the lead in 2 games in the fourth quarter and tied late in the fourth quarter and lost all 3 of them to remain 4-3 right now. And that's why, looking at it from that perspective, I do believe they could very easily be 7-0. And that's why I think they are a sneaky good football team. And I think some of their statistical data shows it when even on defense is only giving up like 17 points a game. And we'll look at some of that overall about this Maryland team. So Indiana definitely will have a huge game there in College Park. Let's see here. Okay. Hey, Brian, what's going on, my man? Like the last name there. And yep, scams are everywhere. Look out. Like I said, I'm the dummy that fell for one. And so appreciate y'all being here with us tonight. I know on Thursday sometimes it gets a little crazy with Sig's radio show and things of that nature. So I didn't schedule very well, I don't think, in some respects. But I digress again. But again, thanks all for being here. But that's why I think Maryland, in a lot of ways, could be a ball club that could really be 7-0 heading into this game Saturday against Indiana, except for losing those games like they did in the fourth quarter and having the lead in two of them in hand. I mean, you have a 17-point lead against Washington and lose the game. I mean, that's crazy. And in some ways, kind of reminds me of a old Indiana team that would lose games in that fashion as well. Right now, the betting lines have fluctuated a little bit. It was 21.5. It's now up to 22.5. The over-under was at 44.5, and now it's up to 50.5. So right now, Hoosiers are a pretty good big favorite against the Terps. So, you know, those things fluctuate. You can get over to BetMGM and take a look at their betting lines as well. And they've got some things running today. If you sign up and things of that nature. So there are some, I don't want to call it discounts, but some nice ways to sign up and get some bonus cash and things like that. But head over to BetMGM for all that information, as again, the fluctuation of the statistics or the stats, and as well as the betting lines, has changed quite a bit this last couple of days. Headed over here to seeing some of the Big Ten games that are up for this weekend. Of course, the big one, Fox Noon kickoff, 12 o'clock there in Columbus, Penn State and Ohio State. You know, that will be an interesting ball game to see how Penn State comes into it. They also had a bye last week and were able to, get 2 weeks of working on Ohio State, but more importantly, working on themselves since the change in coaching there, firing Coach Franklin. Of course, they went to Iowa right after that, lost by 1 point in Iowa City. But now they've got a couple weeks. They got a new quarterback in there as Aller was lost for the season. And they now get to go take on the number 1 ranked team, the Ohio State Buckeyes, there in Columbus. Ohio State currently is a 20.5 point favorite. Rutgers heads to Illinois at noon on NBC. And the Illini are right now 12.5 point favorite. Rutgers coming off a big win, crazy win over Purdue this past weekend. And Illinois, of course, went out to Washington and got beat pretty good out there by the Huskies. So this game will have an interesting connotation to it. Does Illinois rebound and get themselves back on the winning ways? And does Rutgers, build upon the win that they had at Purdue last week? Of course, Michigan State is at, let's see here. Michigan State is at Minnesota for a 3:30 kickoff with that one. And again, Michigan State, boy, they've had trouble all year long, and they're just not getting it done when it comes to wins and losses for Coach Jonathan Smith. And I think right now, in East Lansing, that is, pretty much has written him off as being a quote unquote kind of a lame duck head coach heading into these final few weeks. He's only been there for 2 years, but they give him no mercy there in East Lansing. So that's a big one as well. And I've got some double ones up here, and I don't know where it's all coming from. So I'll have to look at this in a second, because I can't have Iowa playing and Minnesota playing in 2 different places on Saturday. So we got some confusion there. So we'll skip that one. We'll come back to that one. But Michigan and Purdue play at 7 o'clock on BTN. That one, 21.5 for Michigan. And then the other big one is USC at Nebraska, and that being a big 6.5 point differential. And again, USC cannot afford another loss, and or it could really hurt their chances of potentially getting in the playoffs there with everything. But right now, Iowa doesn't play anybody this week because they are on a bye, as is Oregon. Those two will play next week. Oregon and Iowa will play next week in Iowa City. Huge game as well. And then Northwestern, Wisconsin, and UCLA are the other teams that are currently on a bye this week, getting a chance to heal some bumps and bruises in that regard. So we'll see a couple of those things there. Let's look at, of course, the AP poll. We know where Indiana stands in that regard. Right now at number 2, Texas A&M with that big win at LSU is number 3. Alabama again playing well, and those two teams right there are sitting on the heels of 2 Big Ten teams as we head into this week. And then Georgia, Oregon, Ole Miss, Georgia Tech, Vandy, and Miami Hurricanes. And of course, there's only 11 available spots. Monday night, I believe, is the first release of the poll for the college football playoffs. And that will be on Monday, I believe. Ohio State and Indiana in the coaches poll, both 1 and 2, no change there. And again, pretty similar to the AP poll when you look at the top 10 and stuff. But that first ranking should come out next week on Monday night, and we will find out for where everyone kind of sets up in the college football playoffs and where they may be slotted. Indiana holds serve this weekend. It'll be interesting because one could argue based upon their resume and other things that we talked about on Monday, really could be ranked number 1 over Ohio State. But we'll have to wait and see, with Ohio State being that defending champion right now. And it's an interesting discussion point when you talk about signature wins, of which Ohio State really doesn't have any. When they played Texas, that was thought to have been a signature win, but Texas has really fallen off the face of the mountain, so to speak, because of some of the losses they have taken. And they're now without Arch Manning, who's under concussion protocol and more likely wouldn't play this weekend. And I do think they play Vanderbilt. Texas does this weekend, which will be another big time game to keep an eye on there. The other one is the power rankings in the Big Ten. Not too much is different there. I mean, we had some, like Illinois drop some and Minnesota drop some, but you can kind of see it there. Pretty good representation of the Big Ten overall. Again, it's hard to gauge how strong the Big Ten is or isn't versus the SEC. The SEC, I think, has more one-loss teams and teams ranked in the Big Ten, and therefore the natural conclusion would say the SEC is deeper. I don't know if that's a correct statement or not. It appears that way. We're going to find out here over the next couple of weeks, because the SEC, they'll start playing each other, and we'll find out who they don't win or lose against as we come down to the conclusion of the year. But that gives you an idea of the polls as well as the Big Ten power rankings. We talked about FPI, where Indiana is good there. They're really good on the resume using the FPI as well as their SOR, strength of record, and their SP rankings. So Indiana, if they can hold serve this weekend, is really sitting pretty good in the eyes of, the data that the College Football Playoff Committee will look at overall when you think about it. But that's kind of something to keep an eye on with everything with this game on Saturday and how it may or may not affect the overall landscape of the college football playoffs and how Indiana is in that regard as well. But it should be a dandy of a ball game at College Park on Saturday. And when you talk about these two ball clubs here, going to look at some of their, let's see if I can get to, let's get to some of their statistical stuff here. All right, Indiana versus Maryland, comparing the stats of both offenses to each other, defenses, and so forth. As you can see, Indiana has a pretty good differential when it comes to points scored and rushing offense. And then, of course, in total offense, Indiana ranking in the top 5 in a lot of those categories nationally. Really good on third downs right now, 58%, approaching closely to 60 where they were earlier. Maryland has really kind of struggled on third downs. They're 37%. Indiana, with those fourth downs on Saturday, helped boost their percentages from 25% all the way up to 38% on fourth downs. Maryland, and they're at 41.7. Then you get into the red zone scores where Indiana is 89%, 39 of 44 overall. Maryland, 22 out of 26, 84.6%. And again, that's either touchdowns or field goals. When you talk about red zone scores, you're more focusing on touchdowns. In Indiana, right now, it's about 75% there, 42% to Maryland overall. And again, Indiana points off of turnovers is pretty big there at 48. But look at Maryland. They're one of the leaders in the country with turnover margin. And right now, they've scored 55 points off of turnovers on the year. And that's a huge stat, like I said before, because it's a category that Indiana has been very good at over the last 2 years. And when I looked at this Maryland squad and found out, they're one of the leaders in takeaways, it showed that they had as many points scored off of turnovers than Indiana did. So that's something to be aware of with this Maryland defense, is that they are opportunistic when it comes to getting turnovers and takeaways, and their offense being able to convert on them. When you look at the defensive side of the equation, and all things being considered here, Indiana has been just phenomenal in a lot of their statistical categories defensively, ranking high in the national standings right now, only giving up 10.9 points a game, where Maryland hasn't been too shabby themselves, which is kind of ironic when you think about it. A team that's 4-3 overall, losing 3 straight, is only still giving up only 17.3 points a game. That's in itself is kind of remarkable. Rushing defenses, Indiana with a very good, respectable 84.4 a game. Maryland 124.3, and then you can see the passing and the total, where Indiana total defense 242.8. Indiana on third down conversions has been great. They're 24%. 24-102, which tells me that they're facing more third and longs than they are third and mediums, which also tells me that they're getting teams off schedule on the normal downs, where Maryland's defense, not too shabby at 31%, but Indiana right now doing great there, as well as they are on fourth downs at 53%. And then when you look at the red zone scores, and I know it says Indiana at 82% as a defense. Well, they've only given up 11 opportunities out of 8 games in the red zone, which is another phenomenal statistic. And when it comes down to people scoring against them inside the red zone, they've only had 2. They've only given up 2 touchdowns on red zone scores in 8 games. So that's at 18%. That's just phenomenal. Indiana has 29 sacks on the year, and this Maryland defense has 22. And their 2 biggest sack leaders are actually true freshmen on the defense, which is kind of remarkable that they have that. And right now, the turnover margin, Illinois is at a +11. Indiana is at a +8. So right now, Maryland has the advantage in turnover margin at a +11 on the year to Indiana's +8. I do think Maryland in the interception category, if I'm not mistaken, they've had 16 picks this year as a defense. I mean, that's a lot. Indiana's, I think, close to them I think they're at 14 or 13. I can't remember. But Maryland's defense does create opportunities because they do a lot of zone blitzing and stuff. And if you're not aware of who's popping out of the ground, you're going to throw a pick. And in the game against UCLA, Nico threw a pick 6 in that game as well as he did against Indiana. So they're very, very good in that side of the football, led by a former NFL defensive coordinator. Coached with the Ravens during their Super Bowl years, was a D coordinator, I believe, at Michigan for a while. He's actually a coordinator with the Indianapolis Colts. I can't remember. I think it was back in the mid-2000s where he was with the Colts. So a guy that's, seen a lot of ball and does a great job in their defense. So we'll get to some more nitty gritty about that when we get to the video aspect of things. But you can see right there, both defenses are very good and very close in a lot of categories. And you can see the differential there in that respect. When you look at the players of this group, Malik Washington, he is the true freshman, completing about 60% of his passes, 3 interceptions on the year, 11 touchdown passes. He also has about 98 yards on the ground. This kid could spin it, and even though he's, 6'5" and 230, he can move pretty well. So he's a pretty mobile quarterback. He was the top 50 ranked recruit in the nation, according to 247 Sports, and they were able to close him out against some other big teams. So he's having a pretty decent freshman season. And when you look at his touchdown passes to interceptions, he's pretty good with the football in his hands. Does not make too many mistakes throwing it. And he does, he's much more, I guess you could say, further along in his development than you would think a true freshman should be in the Big Ten playing quarterback. Offensively, in terms of the run game, they've got 2 guys. Williams is one of their leading rushers. He's only got 292 yards. Another 4-star recruit. They got him over Michigan, Ohio State, Virginia Tech, and Penn State. And so another good athlete, true sophomore. So a very young in some respects offense. The other one is not E.J. Williams. There's a faux pas. And the next one is Knotts. He's a wide receiver and pretty good wideout for them as well. Has about 421 yards on the year in receptions, averaging about 16.2 catch, but he's got 5 touchdowns on the season. Tall kid, 6'3", runs well, got some speed. He played against IU last year, had 41 yards in receptions, but a kid with experience out on the outside, so he gives them some veteran leadership out there, as does the Octavian Smith kid. Again, EJ's my favorite player. Jesus. But Octavian is another senior player on the outside. He's got 378 yards in receptions, 14 per catch. No touchdowns on the year, but he's a 4-year player. So he's played in every year that he's been with Maryland. And another kid that's got pretty good speed on the outside. And them as an offense. Now, they've got 2 other guys that have over 200 yards in receptions, but these are their top two wideouts when you look at them. On defense, one of the big ones is Stewart. He's a true freshman, 6'2", 255, 19 tackles, 14 solos, but he has 8 TFLs and 5.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. I do believe he's like 6th in the Big Ten in TFLs and tied for 5th in sacks or somewhere in that category. Out of Maryland, not an overly big recruit in terms of the star rating, but for being a freshman to stepping on the turf there at Maryland and be one of their leaders on defense, that tells you how good a player this kid is. And he's a guy that Indiana must be fully aware at where he's lining up, because he's a threat in their sack department with what he's got. The other kid on the D-line, another true freshman, Mathis. This kid's 6'6", 222, more of an outside linebacker type edge rusher. He's got 4.5 sacks on the year. He was once at 3rd in the Big Ten, which I think was 4th week of the year when he had a lot of those sacks. He's an Under Armour All-American. They beat Ohio State, Florida State, Michigan on him. And I think Penn State was the other one. But these 2 cats, I mean, you talk about really good freshmen. There's 2 of them right there that have combined for 10 sacks on the year. And they're 2 guys that Indiana's going to have to be fully aware of because both of them have good speed off the edge, and they're going to have to be somebody that's accounted for in the passing game. And their leading linebacker is Sidney Stewart. He's a junior, 6'5", 230. Again, 4.5 TFLs, 1.5 sacks, but he's got 65 tackles on the year. So a pretty active kid. 3rd year playing, in a full-time atmosphere. But he's one of the top 25 players in Maryland, which is a great fertile recruiting area, as Sig related to on Monday's press conference. And they've done quite well of keeping Maryland kids at home when it comes to football. And again, Loxley's got a lot of talented young kids that are in the lineup for them and becoming huge factors. So from a future perspective, they got to feel pretty confident in what they've got in the program. And they're not too many points away from being 7-0 with this group. So you can see where that is a huge, huge boost to this Maryland team, and why I say they're sneaky good, because you don't hear a lot about these guys to a certain extent in terms of who they've got. But when you sit down and look at it, and I know they're 4-3 on the paper, but you look how they've lost the 3 in a row, and looking at some of their players and their productivity level, some of these players, to find out that they're freshmen. I mean, that's a pretty impressive group of young men that they've got, and it's showing up in the stat line, especially defensively. And Washington hasn't been all that bad at quarterback for them. So it's a very talented group, but young group of Terps there in their lineup. And last year was a complete bust for them that Coach Loxley attributed to him losing the locker room. And it wasn't a great scene there at Maryland due to what transpired there during the season. And then you can see in the offseason, there's a lot of guys that left. I mean, Indiana picked up 2 of them, and Edwards, the quarterback, went to Wisconsin. Now he's gone for the year, but so they lost some good productivity there, but they've been able to replace them with pretty decent guys coming in and putting freshmen in a position to go play. So you got to tip their cap to them. And this is why Indiana is going to have to be fully and totally engaged from the word go Saturday afternoon, because they can't afford to play sloppy against these guys. They got to be on point, because if they're sloppy offensively and get behind the sticks, Maryland's going to tee it up on them, and they're going to have a hard time. And then, of course, on defense, they're going to have to not only keep Malik in the pocket, but they're going to have to make sure that they force them into being a one-dimensional team, because they haven't shown a great ability to run the football this year, only averaging about 100 yards. But they've only given up 3 sacks. That's another thing that's kind of ironic. Here's a team that you would think, if they're that good as a team, only giving up 3 sacks, in some respects, you would think they'd be able to run the ball better, but they haven't in that regard. Let's see if I'm missing anything there. Hey, Justin, glad you're here, partner. The freshman QB is in for a long day. Well, let's hope so. And I hope Indiana can get pressure on him with the 4 guys that they, have and can make him one-dimensional. And those guys win battles at the point of attack, where, like Indiana did a week ago against UCLA, and then pick and choose the times when they want to light it up. But that's going to be a big part of that game Saturday, is Indiana's defense being able to keep this Maryland team in check overall. You feel like, Brian says, I feel like the defense shows up. It's not going to matter much what Maryland does. And that could very well be true. I mean, Indiana's defense is damn good. It's a good defense. And as they say, defenses travel. So overall, you got to feel confident in that respect. But it's on the offensive side of the ball where they've been rolling wrong, and being able last week of establishing that running game and how huge that was to get back on track, getting 263 yards on the ground last week, I say was a huge shot in the arm to them, because they had not had a production out of the run game for about 2 or 3 weeks. Their last best running game was against Illinois, over 300 yards, but Iowa knocked that down, as did Iowa, and then I can't remember, you had Oregon in there, which they did pretty decent against Oregon. But it was good to see them get that established on Saturday. When we come back, we're going to look at this team from a perspective in the video room, Coach Griff's video room, talk about that, and then, of course, we'll finish up with the objectives. All right, here on Hoosier Tailgate on thehoosier.com. We'll be back right after this.
Huddle up, football fans. Tailgate season is here, and nobody gets you ready for game day like Academy Sports and Outdoors. Swing by your local Academy store or shop online at academy.com to find everything you need, from grills to jerseys and more. Be a watch party legend with gear from top brands like Nike and Under Armour, all at unbeatable prices every day. With 8 Academy stores across Indiana, including our Bloomington location, fun can't lose, and neither can you. Gear up today at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. 1. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. 2. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. 3. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Make this college football season 1 for the history books. Make it legendary. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPNBY or text HOPNY 467369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT STEP, Arizona, 1-800-3275.
Welcome back to the Hoosier Tailgate as we take a look here with this ball club of Maryland and some of their games this year thus far. and try to get an idea on this club. And like I said, these are the games that these guys, lost against UCLA, lost in the last seconds. Washington lost in the fourth quarter after having the lead 20-3, lost in the fourth quarter with a minute left to Nebraska. And they've had some tough losses in that regard. But this is against UCLA prior to UCLA playing Indiana. But here in Illinois, I'm on the Illinois kick tonight. UCLA's bringing some heat, and this is where this Washington kid does a great job. He's pretty cool in the pocket. They do a good job of picking up the blitz, and there's one of their big men getting the ball down the sidelines, and they did a great job of protecting him. Pretty good size up front, big and strong. Again, good pickup on the blitz, and he was able to get the ball off before they got to him and gets a big play out of it. Again, another 2nd and long here. Nothing's, they're not a team that you're going to see a lot of crazy formations. Loxley and, the guy that he's got running it this year is, pretty stable in what they are philosophically. And you're going to see a lot of similar formations Indiana runs, some plays. Here's a RPO game where he does a great job, bringing that safety down. That's the cat he's reading there. And throwing it right, in front of him there, and another big play. So again, he's a pretty poised kid, and you can kind of see how big he is, standing in the pocket there. I mean, he don't look like no freshman to me in that respect. So, pretty good ball player, but there it is. Good quick release, gets it in and out of his hands, and away they go on that one. Again, a game that pretty much was evenly matched against Maryland. Again, this is their bluff. They're running a concept, taking like kind of a miniature mesh route in that respect. And this is where you got to be careful because he'll set up and do that. And he's a big, strong kid. In Indiana, when you saw Nico run last week, on the first sack of the game that they had, he was about 8 yards a loss, and he prevented it because he's so strong that he was able to get back to about only making it a 2-yard loss. Again, quick throw in and out of his hands. Their wide receivers do a good job blocking. And again, short pass turns into a big gain for them. Let's see what we got here. They're going to heat him up again. And here's, this tells you the kid's smart. He knows right now he doesn't have the back end protection. They're going to go with what we called it scat because there's nobody in there to protect as the backer if a backer comes. So he right now knows that if somebody comes off this left side, he's got to beat him with the throw. Well, UCLA gets picked off in some respects, and they don't have him, and he makes a nice throw out here to the running back and big play down the sideline and puts him in position to score points again. So defensively, again, you're going to see a lot of different things sometimes in here. Number 9 will line up on the edge sometimes. You're going to see him in the backer position sometimes. You can lock him into this 4-man front at times. They're a defense that's always going to move, slant or angle. And this time here, we call this angle because they're angling towards the field to our right. If they were moving to our left, we'd call it slant for the short end of the field. But they do a good job of protection here. UCLA does, wadding it up. And if you can get the protection there, you can see the holes that this defense will provide you. It's just making sure that you're getting it to the right guy and not making one guy pop out of nowhere. Here's the one freshman here to our right here, 29. 9's not in there right now. Their secondary, like I said, 16 picks on the year, so they got pretty good ball skills and make things happen in that regard. Again, they got him in that 4-man front, as you can see here, going with a ghost look, 4 no backs, and then motioning back here and getting what we call a nub tight end. Only guy on the line of scrimmage backside, and a twins to the field. And they're a little confused by that happening there, because you can watch this guy. He's looking for a call from the safety because it changed. So right down here, they're kind of playing more of a zone look, cover 3 type of look. And at the top, they're playing more cover 2. So you will see a lot of what we call combo coverages, where they'll play one coverage into the boundary. Like here, this is cover 2, and they'll play more, like in this instance, more like a cover 3, where you got guys responsible for flat, third, and a rolling there, and this guy staying on the half. So you get some of those combination coverages. And UCLA was able to run that one pretty good up the middle on just a basic play. But you can see how these defensive ends play. They get wide at times, and they're kind of in a light box. Now they're in a 6-man box. They look at it there, it's 6-man. But see, I think this guy right here is wrong. He should be more out here because of the trip set. And they just run inside zone and do a good job. But they got some strong dudes up front, and they do a good job. I mean, this was a good play by this defensive end, 56 here. He keeps Nico in check because he's running the read play, and then he's able to get back in on the tackle. That's a pretty good ball play by that kid. I'm going to try to get here to again, like I said, they're in that formation because what they found is it locked them in it. Now you're getting them a little tighter in here. And when they get tighter, and you can see this guy's playing more over the tight end. He's more in the third. He's kind of over this guy. This guy's over that guy. You got to think something's up here. And what they like to do is what we call a flash blitz, and I'll show you if this is it. So a flash blitz is what you're seeing here, is they're bringing this guy off the edge. This guy here is coming off the edge. They're moving their front this way. This guy may pop out of here and go to a zone protection or drop in a zone. So it's kind of a zone blitz scenario. And he's hanging in there now because he's getting a run look. That's the other freshman, number 9, there in the boundary. Pretty nice. Well, no, it's 56. That was pretty nice play by that kid. But you can see like the difference between last play with these guys. They're more traditionally lined up, where he's in a 3 and he's truly in what we call a 1-eye or a 2-eye in that respect. So a little tighter. And this is where they're going to go boop, boop, boop. And he's going to come off the edge and come. And there's another guy coming from out here. So that's a pretty big deal because it gives you a 4 from a side look, which would theoretically put you outmanned. Raise your hand if you have any questions. All right, here we go. This time, now they're kind of in a 2 tight end set. They brought that extra tight end guy in there at the top. And this has a tendency to help balance him up because you can see now he's a 0 and they're in an odd front, even though they got 2 guys up on the outside. But you can see single high safety. It's either going to be what I call cover 1 or cover 3. And cover 1's man free. And of course, cover 3 is your traditional third, flat, and a third. and they end up running kind of a modified counter play against it. So this is what I meant by the odd front, because that could be a signal for something coming. You know, you got one's high safety, so you got to be alert on somebody potentially coming, and then somebody dropping out of it. As you can see them shift here late, and they're bringing that same flash blitz from the field. And so they have a little bit of this and a little bit of that and that. Now here's a situation in a third down situation here, and you can kind of see it here. These guys are wide. Okay. And then you kind of get the contour of the secondary, kind of a corner, nickel back, safety, corner down here at the bottom. And then, of course, your two linebackers here on third and long. So they end up playing a 2 coverage, rushing 4, dropping their 7. And again, if you give them time, as you can see here, there's holes in this defense. Belongs in the AA. But you can see their defensive line. They didn't have as great a game, I don't think, against these guys as they did in their first couple of weeks here. I'm going to get to the last few plays of this game. Yeah, here's the where the drive starts. It's 17-17, 35 seconds on it. And just going to watch it here as it runs from the wide point of view. They're running a twist. First play is incomplete pass. And you can watch their twist from this side. They're thinking overtime. And they're salivating now because now it's 2nd and 10 and only 4 seconds went off. Now they're in their odd front or a stack front because they're stacking their backers in here. In this big box, those guys here in a 3-man front. So there could be a lot of different stuff coming up, but they kind of bump it off and play kind of a man look. And he does a good job of checking this one down. They're running a mesh concept behind it. So they get a first down there on the second play of the scrimmage. Now they got 24 seconds left. Twist again by Maryland. And this is a route that a lot of teams have ran against them with success. And we call this a flood route. So you got a guy going deep. You got a guy that's running a kind of a corner route and a guy that's coming out here in the flat. So you got a 3 true concept where quarterbacks 1, 2, and 3 on his read. And a lot of teams have hurt them on this exact route like they did there because they get a matchup problem. This is a linebacker or safety who jumps all the way inside for no apparent reason. And they get the corner route for a big play. And again, they got a hell of a kicker. So they're already in field goal position in this aspect of it. So again, good protection. That's an easy throw for him. So now 18 seconds left. So they're playing pass and they run inside zone and gash them. They've got him in man free, 1 high safety. You kind of get the look. It's man coverage. You got 4 guys down. They're going to play man and they gash them. And that's the ball game after this. But you can see how big this hole is because, I mean, look at that hole. I mean, that end has no prayer where he's at to make this play with what they're doing here. So UCLA knocks them off the ball. They think it's pass, and they run a simple inside zone and gash them. Crazy. And then the kid comes out and makes the field goal, and that's ball game. And that is how they lost that game against UCLA out in UCLA there. But Indiana, and going back here to the, let's see. Get back here. What I'm thinking from them for Indiana, when you think about some of this situation here by them, and I got to pull something else up here real quick, is kind of some of these objectives when you think of playing a team like Maryland on the road. And again, I do think the running game is going to be a big factor and has to be a big factor for Indiana on the road. You do not know what type of weather you're going to get this time of year. You know, it's got a chance it could be cold. And from what I'm hearing, there's going to be a big change in the weather here sometime this weekend. But for Indiana, being able to run the football against this team is critical. And I do think if they can do that, it'll be enough to keep Maryland off balance. Stay on schedule so you stay out of the junk that Maryland likes to do. And Indiana did a great job against the UCLA doing that. And then, of course, winning the money downs. The other thing is they got to get points every time they're in the red zone. So whether it's a field goal or 6 points, preferably the latter, they've got to be almost 100. They have to be 100%. You cannot leave points on the field by having mix-ups in the red zone. And then I still think they're going to have to score about 35 points against this ball club, which they can do. That's under Indiana's average. Indiana's averaging 46 a game. When you look at the defense, you got to make them one-dimensional, get pressure with the 4 down linemen, you know, Tyreek Tucker, Wheeler, those guys last week had a day, Daly. All 3 of those guys were big last week. They got to be big this week. Get them off schedule so you get them one-dimensional. That way you get them in 3rd and long, winning those money downs, getting 3 and outs, not giving up the big play as always is kind of a standard one. And then I think they hold them to 14 or less if they do those things above there. They're averaging 28 a game as an offense, so that would be half of their production. So if Indiana can do that and their offense can have a big day at the office in having a pretty balanced attack, then I think they walk out of College Park with a big win on Saturday afternoon. Where they get in trouble is if they are sloppy on offense and start getting themselves in trouble by being not efficient on 1st and 2nd down and putting themselves in 3rd and long situations where Maryland can start doing their junk. That's the stuff that leads to turnovers. And Indiana can stay out of that by staying on schedule and keep them guessing. Indiana, thus far on the year, run-pass distribution is about 60-40, which is pretty phenomenal when you think about it, that they've been that consistent in their ratios, 60-40 on the year. And in that respect, it gives you a good idea of what Indiana's been able to do against defenses is they've been able to keep them at bay a little bit because they don't have a tilted offensive strategy where they're out of whack on their run-pass ratios. So they've done pretty good. Now, of course, 1st and 10, I think they've been pretty balanced there as well because you have the RPOs, which are a huge part of the offense and still will be. And but again, Indiana's going to have to play their A game. They're not, you can't walk out into Maryland and go out there and get by playing a B game, because if you remember the last time that they were at Maryland, it was in 2023, and Indiana got their kicked 44-17. So It's not a place that's been overly friendly to Indiana, although Indiana has an 8-5 advantage in the terms of won losses. Let me see. Okay, any other questions here? Nope, all pretty good there on everything. Again, right off the bat, Indiana, like I said, if they can do that on offense and defense. And the other thing is special teams and the hidden yardage game that I always talk about, huge against a team like Maryland, because if you can force them to drive the long field more times than not, it's going to be a problem for them. UCLA, that's what happened to UCLA. They got behind the sticks. They were in their territory for the better part of the game on Saturday, and Indiana was able to capitalize in field position. Same thing is true here against Maryland. If they can continue that and win the hidden yardage battle, where Indiana has a short field to go most of the time, they got a chance to put a game in a situation where they give them no hope. And if they can give them no hope, again, that's a benefit for Indiana, because that's what they did against Maryland or UCLA last week. So that is the key in that regard. I'll be back on Saturday prior to the game, probably about an hour and a half prior to the game, for Griff's pregame primer, as we look at this game and see if anything has changed in terms of some of the makeup of the squads, who's in, who's out in that regard, and see if there's anything that has changed over the last 48 hours. Right now, Aiden Fisher is a probable in this game. I haven't heard anything other than that, but I do anticipate him playing. But again, don't know if things have changed over the last couple of days, and anything else, even from the Maryland side of the coin. I don't think they've sent out any type of injuries from even their bye week. So we'll find out more on Saturday. You can tune into that, as well as the post-game show with myself and Jim Shevlin, which is about 30 minutes after all the pressers are completed. But I want to thank you once again for coming and being a part of the tailgate tonight. Much appreciated. Catch me on Saturday again, like I said, for Coach Griff's pregame primer sometime around 1:30, 2 o'clock. Look at my Twitter feed. You'll probably have an idea, because I'll try to put it up there when we'll be on. And then, of course, after the game as well. But again, we will catch you again on Saturday, but more importantly, we'll be back here Monday at 7:30 to recap this Indiana at Maryland for their homecoming game there in College Park. And we'll see if Indiana can come away 9-0 and be in the top 5 or top 4 of Monday's college football playoff bracket 1 when it's released there Monday evening. For now, I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith. You've been watching Hoosier Tailgate right here on thehoosier.com. Good night, everybody.